Hello and welcome to Whispers Reddit. We're thrilled to have you join our cozy corner where we dive into the most intriguing, heartwarming, and sometimes mysterious stories from Reddit. Whether you're here to unwind, get inspired, or simply enjoy a good story, you've come to the right place. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a whisper. Grab a comfortable seat, relax, and let's embark on this storytelling journey together. Thank you for being part of our community. Let's get started. The past few days have been quite the roller coaster, and I'm not sure how to interpret it. My husband and Sil both turn on me during my pregnancy announcement party, saying that they discovered evidence of me cheating on them just 4 times to show up at my parents' house a day later. They both start crying when I tell them about my plan for the two of them, and they frantically want me to stop BC. What I'm about to do is not a prank, but exposing their dirty business. Background: I am 29 years old, married to my 34-year-old husband Jake, and we have a 6-year-old son. Both of us work, but Jake has always handled our finances, so I trusted him with that because I was more concerned with my career and family. However, things seemed to be going well until recently, when his sister Megan moved in with us following what she described as a messy breakup with her partner Tom. Megan was obviously upset, and I wanted to be supportive, so I never asked her. I was more focused on making sure she felt comfortable and welcomed in our home, and I worked hard to help her get over this terrible breakup, but what happened at my pregnancy announcement party completely changed my perspective. We had gathered close family and friends to share the news of our new baby, and the house was a hive of activity. I had spent days organizing this event, making sure every little detail was ideal, from the food to the decorations, and it was meant to be one of the. As I stood in the living room, ready to make the announcement, Jake and Megan exchanged a look that I didn't fully understand at the time. I dismissed it, assuming they were simply excited or nervous about the news. However, as I was about to share our big news, the atmosphere changed, and Jake and Megan stepped forward, causing the room to fall silent. Without warning, they approached me and began asking how I could do this. I laughed for a moment because I thought it was a joke, but then I realized that they were accusing me of cheating. The words hit me like a ton of bricks, and they said they had proof that I had betrayed Jake and our family. My heart was racing as they made their accusations in front of everyone. It was terrifying and surreal, like a bad dream, and nothing made sense. They were just saying random words without providing any explanation. Jake and Megan sounded so convincing and final that I think everyone assumed I was guilty. I stood there frozen, trying to process what was happening, constantly looking for signs that this was a joke or a mistake, but nothing was there. They were serious, and the more they talked, the more alone I felt. The guests' expressions changed from joy to confusion and disbelief, and I could feel their eyes on me as they judged my questions. The people I trusted the most were turning on me in the most public, humiliating way. After Jake finished yelling, he stormed out of the room, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. They had planned this, practiced it, and now they were carrying it out in front of my friends and family. How could they accuse me of something so horrible without any proof? What was the point of this? The more I questioned, the more they stepped up, as if my confusion and pain were evidence of my guilt. I just stood there, my heart pounding, trying to process what had just happened. The guests, obviously uncomfortable and unsure of what to do, started chatting among themselves. It must have been very awkward for them to be in the midst of such a private and public spectacle. Slowly, one by one, they began to depart, giving clumsy looks and hesitant farewells. I couldn't blame them. They weren't sure what to believe, and I lacked the strength to explain. I wanted to ask Megan what all of this was about, to demand some sort of explanation, but before I could even collect my thoughts, she hurried out of the house with her mother without giving me a sidelong glance. I felt completely abandoned, and the walls of the house that had briefly felt like a home closing in on me now felt cold and suffocating. Tears were streaming down my face, so I hastily packed my bag, grabbed my son, and drove off, unsure of where to go, until I arrived at a small. I checked in under a different name in the hopes of keeping a low profile because I didn't want to face anyone, including my friends and family, because they thought I was a cheater and I had no way to prove it. My mind kept going over what had happened that night in an attempt to understand how Jake and Megan could have done this to me and what I had done to deserve it. The hotel on the outskirts of town was far enough from everything that I could breathe again, but it was still close enough that I could feel the weight of what had happened pressing down on me. I didn't even have time to think about how they had found me before they began talking through their apologies, saying that the entire thing was just a prank and that they never intended for it to go as far as they thought it would. The following day, as I was sitting in the hotel room trying to keep myself together for the sake of my son, there was a knock on the door, and there they were, Jake and Megan. They must have found me somehow through my dad, who was the only one who knew where I was. The more they talked, the more ridiculous and infuriating their excuses became. They had turned my world upside down, humiliated me in front of everyone we knew, and expected me to think it was all a joke. However, as they persisted in pleading for my forgiveness, something clicked. Their desperation wasn't just about the prank, it was about what I had begun to discover after the party, when I had been checking our finances and savings to make sure we had. We always paid off our credit card balance in full each month, so this was just completely out of character for us. My biggest question was where this lump sum of money was going, so I brought it up to Jake and asked him for the credit card bills to understand what was going on. I also noticed that our savings had a large hole in them, not just a small discrepancy, but $1,000 or more was missing, and it didn't make sense. But instead of providing an explanation, he became very defensive and made it seem as though I was doubting his integrity, which only made me more suspicious. I chose not to pursue the matter further at that time, but the whole thing didn't sit well with me, and to make things worse, Megan approached me later without warning, telling me that I should never doubt Jake, that he was one in a million, and that I was fortunate to have him. It was odd and unexpected. All of this annoyed and unnerved me, so I began paying closer attention to our bank statements and financial records. As I went through our accounts, I found something concerning. Jake had been sending money to Megan. The transactions were disguised as innocuous payments, but the amounts were too big and too frequent to ignore. It seemed as though she was aware of the conversation I had with Jake and wanted to rewrite the story. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing because the timeline of these transfers coincided with Megan's alleged move-in with us following her breakup, which now seems more like a cover story than the truth. Jake had always handled our finances, and I had implicitly trusted him, but now it was obvious that he had been hiding things from me, including the missing money, the unpaid credit card bill, and Megan's unexpected appearance in our home. Everything began to make sense, but not in the way I had hoped, as I discovered that Jake and Megan had created this entire story to divert my attention from their actual activities. Megan wasn't simply staying with us to avoid the repercussions of her actions, she was hiding from them. The money Jake was sending her wasn't a gift or loan. Rather, it was a part of a bigger plan to conceal her embezzlement from the company she had run with Tom. As everything came together, I realized I couldn't keep quiet. Jake and Megan had attempted to deceive me with their alleged prank at the pregnancy announcement party in an attempt to confuse me. Jake and Megan were in full panic mode at the hotel, trying desperately to convince me that the accusations at the party were just a poorly thought-out prank that had gone too far, but I saw through their lies and knew what they really feared, that I had figured out their scheme and that I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Therefore, instead of discouraging me, it had only strengthened my resolve to find the truth. When they realized I wasn't just playing their game, their faces turned ashen as I told them everything I had learned, how I had pieced together Megan's lies, how I knew about the money transfers, and how their so-called prank had only served to highlight the extent of their betrayal. I told them that I was going to tell our friends and families about everything, but I didn't tell them about it. If needed, I would also inform the authorities that this wasn't just about the money, it was about the trust they. Jake and Megan broke down in tears, pleading with me to reconsider and consider the impact this would have on our lives, but I didn't care anymore, just as my husband hadn't before calling me a cheater in front of our families. They had broken and gone to great lengths to deceive everyone around them, they had used me and manipulated me. Now it was their turn to face the consequences, and I could tell that they were now genuinely concerned about what I knew. Choices, and now they would have to deal with the fallout. After a while, I grew weary of their vacuous excuses and security's request that they escort Jake and Megan out. As Jake was leaving, he turned to face me and said, "I know I made a mistake and I'm sorry for what I did, but if I move forward with my plan, I would be destroying our son's and unborn child's life." His words hit me harder than I anticipated, and I pretended to remain strong, but that one sentence kept repeating in my head, leaving me to question whether this is truly worth it. "I want you guys to help me avoid exposing my husband and sister-in-law after their alleged prank, even if it means potentially ruining my family. I hope you're all doing well, and first and foremost, thank you for leaving so many people behind. If I go ahead and do so, it would almost certainly result in divorce and our family would be completely destroyed. Our children would grow up with their parents at odds, and everything we built together would be torn apart." To be honest, I wasn't completely aware of the dirty business that my husband and my sister-in-law were involved in until a few days ago, so I reached out to Tom, Megan's ex-boyfriend, to get the full scoop. At first, he was hesitant to go into detail about the incident, but after I told him what had recently happened with me, he was happy to tell me everything about it. I also saw some encouraging comments, so I'll try to answer them all. As I looked deeper into our finances and Megan's past, a troubling picture emerged. It all began with Megan's alleged messy breakup that led her to move in with us, but in reality, there was no breakup at all, at least not in the romantic sense. Megan and her partner Tom had been operating a small business together for several months, and during that time, she and Jake had been systematically embezzling money from the company. Small sums at first, then becoming bolder over time, and when Tom eventually realized that there were differences in their accounts, Megan panicked and instead of taking responsibility for her actions, she turned to Jake for assistance. Unfortunately, my husband, who is a protective older brother, decided to help her cover up the crime. Jake's involvement in this scheme was much more extensive than I could have ever imagined. He assisted Megan in laundering the stolen money through our personal accounts, setting up a complex series of transfers moving funds. Jake, who had always managed our money, was able to conceal these transactions from me for months. The sums involved were astounding. More than $100,000 had been stolen from Tom's company, and it had all gone through our accounts. At one point, Jake used his understanding of financial systems to create a paper trail that would be hard for anyone to follow, but their deceit went beyond simply concealing money. They made up a whole story about Megan's life. As I pieced together the timeline, I discovered that their plan had been falling apart in the weeks before I announced my pregnancy. Jake had become anxious due to my increased interest in our finances as we prepared for a baby, and Megan was also experiencing the same feelings. The story she told to explain her abrupt arrival in our home, her bad breakup, emotional distress, and need for family support was a carefully crafted lie meant to keep anyone from looking too closely at the true reason she had left her previous life behind. Their prank at my pregnancy announcement party was a desperate attempt to divert attention, as Tom had started threatening to involve the police if she didn't return the money. They hoped that by making a scene and making me defensive, they would buy themselves more time to hide their tracks. It was a cruel and calculated move that used what should have been one of the happiest moments of my life as a smokescreen for their crimes. The more I discovered, the more I realized how deeply they had lied to me. It wasn't just a case of bad judgment or a brief ethical lapse. It was a well-planned campaign of fraud and manipulation that had been going on for the better part of a year. The two people I trusted the most in the world had been living double lives, putting on a front of normalcy while engaging in criminal activity. They had betrayed my trust, exploited our home as a base for their illegal activities, and potentially jeopardized our future and the future of our unborn child. Activities behind the scenes, and after giving it some thought and reading your advice, I came to the conclusion that what Jake and Megan did to me at my pregnancy announcement party was unacceptable. They violated my trust, used our money to hide their crimes, and then had the gall to humiliate me in front of our loved ones. I've decided that forgiving them without holding them accountable will only encourage them to keep doing whatever they want, thinking they can get away with it. My family is aware of everything that has happened here and how deeply it has affected me. I know that this will be a difficult conversation, but I can't keep this a secret any longer, and they deserve to face the consequences of their actions. I'll let you guys know as soon as that happens. Hello everyone, thank you for your patience and support. I finally did what I said I would, and I gathered our friends and family to expose Jake's and Megan's lies. Was difficult, especially since they had accused me of cheating the last time they had seen me. The rumors had gone viral, and many of them even thought I was expecting someone else's child. I knew I had to convince them to meet me, so I personally reached out to each of them, telling them that I had something important to reveal that would change everything they thought they knew. There was a lot of awkwardness and skepticism, but in the end, they agreed to listen to me. The room was silent as I explained how I had been going over our finances and finding the missing money, and how Jake had reacted so defensively when I asked him about it. I also explained how Megan had tried to convince me that I was doubting a husband who was one in a million, but I was determined. When everyone finally gathered, the tension in the room was palpable, and I could see the mix of doubt and curiosity in their eyes. I brought in my trump card, Tom, who had volunteered to stand by me as a witness the last time we met to discuss everything because I knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to persuade everyone, especially after the accusations against me. I came prepared with proof, bank statements, credit card bills, and all the evidence I had painstakingly gathered. I laid them out in front of everyone, showing the series of transactions that revealed how Jake had been transferring money to Megan, helping her cover up her embezzlement. As he related how Megan and Jake had been systematically stealing from the company, my in-laws respected and even admired him. I knew his words would be taken seriously, and the disbelief in the room was almost palpable. My mother-in-law's face went white when she realized the truth, and my father-in-law shook his head in shock that two people they loved and trusted had been lying to them all along. Finally, I addressed the big issue, the accusations of cheating. I looked each of them in the eye and told them they were welcome to look through my laptop and phone if they needed reassurance because I had nothing to hide because I had never done anything wrong. The room was silent for what seemed like an eternity, and I could see the shock etched on everyone's faces, especially my mother-in-law and father-in-law. That Jake and Megan had thrown at me during the pregnancy announcement party before I revealed what they later told me about it being a prank. My mother-in-law appeared completely heartbroken, unable to reconcile the image of their cherished children with the truth of what they had done. My father-in-law, on the other hand, was clearly upset, his fists clenched as he heard Tom describe how Jake and Mean had embezzled money from the company and deceived everyone around them. I knew it was a lot for them to process, and my own family responded when my parents, who had initially believed the cheating accusations, had. As the realization set in, a few family members came forward with more details about Megan. One of my cousins said that Megan had borrowed money from her some time ago, claiming she was in a bad spot after her breakup with Tom. My mother's voice cracked as she repeatedly apologized, telling me how sorry she was for doubting me and how ashamed she felt. My father, who was usually so stoic, looked at me with tears in his eyes and continued to say that he failed me and was sorry. Never gave the money back, and whenever the subject was brought up, Megan would start crying about how awful things were with Tom, making everyone feel sorry for her and putting the matter out of her mind. Another relative then shared a similar story, and it became evident that Megan had been manipulating people around her for a while. By the end of it, the room was filled with shock, anger, and disbelief. My in-laws were devastated, finding it difficult to accept that their kids had done something so horrible, and my parents were overcome with. Even though Jake and Megan weren't there, their absence spoke volumes about the betrayal and the beginning of the fallout. I could see the pain in everyone's eyes, but I knew I had done the right thing. Jake and Megan had deceived everyone around them for too long, thinking they could get away with it. This was no longer about keeping up appearances or saving face, it was about making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. I'm fairly certain that when. It's been a while since I last posted, and so much has happened that I'm not sure where to begin. First and foremost, I'm no longer staying at the hotel after everything that happened to my parents. Jake and Megan will react wildly when they hear about this, but there is just too much to handle, and I can't bear this burden for long. For now, I feel relieved that my family is aware of the truth, and I hope that things will improve in the future. Requested that I come and stay with them. They claimed that this was because they didn't want to miss the chance to care for my son and the unborn child, but I know that part of this was because they felt guilty for not believing me at first. Nevertheless, I accepted their offer, and it has been nice to be home, especially since I'm pregnant and moving around a lot isn't ideal. Being in one place with people who truly care about me has been a relief, even if it is only temporary, despite the relative. Jake and Megan have remained in contact despite their very different reasons for doing so. Since the truth came out, Jake has been on a never-ending apology tour. When he first found out that I had introduced him and Megan to our families, he was a little upset, but he quickly returned to his apologetic tone. It seems as though he is torn between wanting to show his regret and feeling deceived that I revealed everything. He keeps saying he wants to meet our son, and I know I should probably allow them to see each other. He has tried to visit me multiple times, but I've asked my parents to keep him away for the time being because I just don't have the emotional energy right now. The events of the past few days have taken a toll on me both mentally and physically. I've told Jake about this, but he seems to think I'm avoiding him on purpose. Every time I think about the betrayal, the lies, and how easily he could have ruined my life with his accusations and deceit, I feel sick. On the other hand, Megan has been nothing short of a nightmare since the whole revelation to the family. She has made it a point to bombard me with texts and voicemails full of every slur and insult imaginable. I suspect that some of our relatives filled her in on everything, especially the part where I involved Tom, and she is furious about that. However, part of me wonders if there is any way we could ever come back from this, not as a couple but at least as co-parents. As much as I've tried to shield my son from all the drama, I can't deny that it's affected him too. He was present at the pregnancy announcement party when Jake and Megan accused me of cheating, so he knows something's wrong even though I've done my best to keep him out of it. It breaks my heart every time he asks where his dad is and why he isn't visiting, and I've been telling him that Jake is on a business trip and will return soon, but I know that this lie can only go so far. I don't want to make Jake the bad guy, at least not in front of our son. He doesn't deserve to be involved in this mess, and I want to shield him from the harsh truth as much as possible. All of this has made me wonder what I should do next, especially in regards to the divorce. After everything Jake has done, I don't trust him at all, and whenever I consider our future together, all I can think about is the lies, betrayal, and the suffering I'm torn between wanting to leave this toxic situation and worrying about what it would mean for my children's future. The idea of being a single mother is intimidating, especially with a new baby on the way. My son already knows his father, and if I go through with a divorce, my unborn child might never get the chance to know theirs. That's when I start to lose my mind. At the end of the day, I know I need to consider what's best for myself and my children. Jake's betrayal isn't something I can just forgive and forget, and Megan's ongoing harassment only strengthens my resolve, but making the final decision still feels overwhelming. I'm taking it day by day, trying to focus on the positives being back home with my kids. Making a decision that I'll regret divorce seems like the only logical step, but the thought of carrying it out scares me. It's been a lifeline for me during this trying time, and I'm grateful to my parents for their support and knowing that I'm doing everything in my power to protect my son and my unborn child. I'm still figuring out the best course of action, but knowing that I have a community of people who care and understand means the world to me. I'll keep you updated as things develop, but until then, I'll be taking things one step at a time in the hopes that I find the strength to make the right decisions for my family. See you soon. This may be my final Reddit update, so I'll keep it brief. I read your comments and with your help, I've decided to proceed with the divorce. A few days ago, I invited Jake over to see our son. It was the first time we'd been together since everything happened, so I knew it was time to break the news. When I told him about my decision, he did what he's been doing the entire time. He apologized, said he could change, and insisted that we could work things out. However, I knew that staying would only cause more suffering down the road, and it wouldn't be good for my children to grow up in a hostile and distrustful environment, so I explained that the divorce was taking place, but I also reassured him that he would still be able to see our son on a regular basis without any problems. As for Megan, I've informed her through our family that if she keeps harassing him, this could easily turn into a legal battle. I reminded her that this wouldn't be a good look on her at all considering everything that has already reached. The messages have stopped ever since, and I've finally been able to breathe and feel like I have closure. I know that this isn't the end and that there is still a long way to go, but at least the path forward is a little clearer now, and I'm concentrating on myself, my son, and the unborn child, which is what really matters.